Well, except for my camera. Oh, my camera isn't working. Okay, well, excuse me a second, folks, while I see if I can rectify that maybe. But, looks like my camera, unfortunately. Okay, well, we are going to do it this way. Work on the waiting pen. I will just talk. My camera must have. Let me see if I can fix my camera. Let me try unplugging it, plugging it back in. Give me a second here, folks. If I stop streaming, we will be in trouble.
Right on.
Okay, well, you know what? Just 2 minutes to go. We are gonna just go without my camera. I don't know why that's not working, but you can definitely hear me, and I will be running the slides. So here we are. We have the What's Up with Power Ride. Here we learn the basics of power-based training, based on the book Training and Racing with Power Meter by Hunter Allen and Andrew Coggin. It's a great book. If you don't have access to that book, or you haven't gotten it, I'd highly suggest going out and getting it, as a great reference to cover the material that we'll be covering in here. This is we'll have 15 minutes of teaching, followed by 15 minutes questions and answering section. And so you should be able to see on the screen when people are talking, although it looks like maybe that's not working on the overlay either. Can I get somebody else to talk in Discord and see if their name pops up on the overlay?
Hey, Justin, how's it going?
Okay, well, we definitely have their audio coming in. Can I get somebody on the Facebook Live feed to confirm if they are hearing me on Facebook Live? I presume you are, but with the difficulties I'm having in my overlay and my camera, I just want to confirm that Facebook Live is getting an audio feed. So if you could confirm that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah,
so is anyone
on the audio on Facebook?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Graham. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, just a little bit of difficulties in some of the streaming stuff, but we'll be okay, because honestly, it's not about seeing me. It's about hearing the content and seeing the slides, and I'm pretty sure we've got that working today. So we're about 15 seconds till we start. Okay, get the group rolling here once we start. Count down and roll out. We had about 48 riders to begin here. And okay, so today we're going to be talking about something called power profiling, or basically how we get to know our strengths and weaknesses as a bike racer based on our power outputs. And so this is, again, this is based on Chapter 4 of Training and Racing with the Power Meter by Hunter Allen and Andrew Coggin. Highly suggest getting that book. We just basically give the cliff notes here, and there's a lot more depth you can go into if you go out and get that book. So it's highly recommended. All right, so what is the outline for today? We're going to talk about what the power profile chart is, what it means, how it was derived, what information you can get from it, a testing protocol to basically get some numbers for yourself out of that power profile chart. We talk about how you then apply and interpret those results of your test, and how you can apply that towards different rider types such as all-rounders, sprinters, time trialists, pursuiters, climbers. You've heard these type of names around people who are known to be these type of riders. Now we're going to basically learn what specifically we can measure that indicates that somebody would be one of these type of riders. So, and again, after we do this 15 minutes of teaching, we'll have 15 minutes of questions and answers where you'll be able to throw out questions in the Discord chat, Facebook chat, or just the Discord audio. Let me know and we'll have a conversation. So, I have a chart here up on the screen that is showing basically it gives you a way to determine for a given power output that you can perform what you would classify that in terms of, say, racers in the real world. So the notion here is we'd like to say, hey, this is my FTP. Where do I kind of fall in the mix of things? Like, is there a way for me to kind of gauge how good of a racer I would be with that FTP? Now, honestly, there's better ways. Racing performances over time are better indication actually of what kind of a racer you are, and how well you place and have strategy. But if we're just looking at the power numbers and we want to get a feel for the range we would most likely fall into, this is the approach it's taken. And so the approach was taken was to basically take the very top of the lines, take world-class, top-of-the-line world champions at the top of the chart, and an average untrained rider at the bottom, and they basically have a linear progression of the different watts per kilo numbers in between those two extremes. So, and they have it broken down for 5-second sprint efforts, 1-minute efforts, 5-minute efforts, and your functional threshold, or essentially what you can hold for 60 minutes. So what does this mean? You can take your FTP in watts per kilo, look up on this chart, and see where you would fall. Now I've captured in this screen, the shot, the top half of the chart, so it's basically everything from 4.5 watts per kilo FTP to 6.6. So that's on the high range, but the chart's much bigger, and you can see lower where you would fall. And I'm not even sure on the stream if that's going to be very visible, but you can Google it, power profile chart. There's many different versions of it, and you can look it up and see where you fall. So you imagine, okay, well, how would I get my numbers for these different time efforts? So we've talked about FTP before, so we know that column, as we've done. We talked about that last week. So the same kind of testing protocol exists for 5-minute, 1-minute, and 5-second. Basically, you got to do a test. Go all out for these time intervals. And so with the 5-second, 1-minute, and 5-minute, there's not as long of a test, so it's a little bit easier to do. But that's how you would get your number. You just go take your average power for that time frame. So here on the screen is a quick view of, there's some software. So this actually comes out of Training Peaks. This is just a generic one that captures over time your power numbers, your best power number. I think this is showing over the last 4 weeks for those different time frames. So you see this person's best 60-minute effort over the last 4 weeks has trailed down. Now that might be because they're not doing 60-minute long hard efforts. But you can see as those bars get bigger, it's showing you where you would fall in that power profile chart. So 3 weeks ago, this person had a very, very good 5-second sprint that would put them in the Cat 1 range. This is the kind of information you get based off that power profile chart. Again, I think I kind of covered this already, but structured test. You can go do a test where you basically go all out for 5 seconds, take some rest, then do an all-out 1-minute effort, take some rest, 5-minute. You don't have to do all of them in the same session. In fact, you don't even specifically need to do a test where you do all of them at the same time. You can just simply take your best 5-second effort you've ever done and put it in the chart, or your best 1-minute power effort. And so that's where talked there about using your race or training data. Take your best power in those time frames and see where you line out. And so this is where the next step comes in, is basically, all right, so we've got our 4 numbers. We know what our best 5-second power is. We know what our best 1-minute effort is, our best 5-minute, and our best 20-minute. Those 4 numbers are going to help us determine our strengths and weaknesses. We basically want to know which of those 4 are we strongest in, or which is our weakest. And that pattern of how strong you are in one and weak in the other will help you determine the kind of racer you are. So that's where we're going to come into next. And so basically the objective here is you take that information, you take the power profile chart that we showed on the first slide, and you highlight where you fall in each of those columns. All right, so I think we covered this slide actually. And I want to point out that when we talk about like what kind of racer you are, what you're good at, it's what is your strongest suit as a racer. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a professional rider, but it means if you were equally matched, if you were in a field of those in similar ability to you, you would stand out in this particular aspect, because that's where you're stronger in that area than your other ones. So okay, so now I've got a chart up on the screen. This is if a sprinter were to take their efforts and highlight them on the chart. So in the blue on the left is for a man, pink on the right is a woman. And what I want to point out here is you notice that the red are the highlights. The 5-second effort is much higher up on the chart than the 1-minute, 5-minute, and the functional threshold power. This means the person is relatively much stronger in a sprinting effort than they are in, say, a 1-minute, 5-minute, or threshold power. Or you see even the woman there, they're actually still fairly strong almost just as strong in a 1-minute effort as a 5-second, but it's still, because they have such a high sprint, you're going to classify them as a sprinter. Excuse me while I take a drink here. If you have questions that come up during, feel free to let them fly in the comments. I'll scroll back and cover them when we get to the question and answer section. Okay, so this is a sprinter, just characterized by the 5-second effort being much higher than the 1, 5, and threshold. Or basically the left side of the chart here is much higher. So let's move on to what does an all-rounder look like. This is probably in the woman example on the right. It's a little more clear. An all-rounder, basically, none of their 4 efforts are really far away from the others. It's basically more of kind of like a flat line. They may be a little stronger in the sprint, maybe the 1 minute, but pretty much those 4 efforts all fall within the same basic range. Now you can see this man here does have a relatively stronger threshold power compared to 5-minute, 1 minute, and 1 second. So it might almost be a time trialist or steady state, but we'll see when we get to the time trialist where that threshold is even farther away from their sprint. So this person still comparatively has a fairly decent sprint and 5-minute effort compared to their threshold power. Okay, so an all-rounder is basically someone who you would expect to be able to hold their own in many different categories. If you come down to a sprint, they're going to have a decent shot at winning the sprint. They're going to hold the time trial. They may not win the sprint, may not win the time trial, but they're going to be consistently up there in the top, placing well in all types of racing. Okay, so now here we go. We've got what you would determine a time trialist, a climber, or a steady state, or maybe even a triathlete, you could say here. Not necessarily, there's other things to factor in on a triathlete, but for just road riding, here we see, now you begin to see where the threshold power for the man is much higher than his 5-minute, 1 minute, and 5 seconds. So this person's going to be able to go in the hurt box and hold it for a long time. And the woman's example here, I'd say And I think these are actually real people's curves. These are not just made up examples. You see that it's not a perfect science. So this woman still has, actually, per the numbers, has a stronger 1 minute effort than a threshold power. But because the threshold power that is up there, we can still maybe consider them a time trialist. Or maybe this is a real world time trialist that we know they're a time trialist based on the racing performance, but they actually also as well have a very strong 1 minute effort, which would be characteristic of a pursuiter, which we'll show here. So pursuiter, I think the name pursuiter comes from the track. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe pursuit is essentially a 1-ish kilometer long kind of deal, 1 minute, right?
That's the one where you go around the course and try and catch them.
Okay.
So you're on opposite sides of the velodrome.
Got it. So having very, very strong 1 minute power is very critical in that type of a race. And so we see here on these charts, their 1 minute power is way higher than their 5 second or their 5 minute or their threshold power. And so this is what we would, in this case, you would be classified as a pursuiter. Okay, so a lot of stuff covered there, a lot of gory details. I know for maybe a lot of you that might just have been listening and not talking, it might have been hard to follow. I tried hard to talk through the charts so you could get the gist that way as well. We're going to move on to the question and answer session. And I'm going to start here looking at the Facebook comments, see what we have, see if I can keep my legs spinning at the same time. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone for the comments there. Yeah, the camera is not working today, but so I apologize for that. I'm not sure what happened. But any questions on Discord? They don't have to be related to what we talked about today. They can be anything related to power-based training. It's an open session for you to get those questions out, and we will answer them at the best of our ability. Hopefully give you a reference if something you can go look up if maybe we don't have the answer for you right away. But
so Justin,
yes.
If someone's profile indicates they are a sprinter, is there specific training or would specific training be able to shift that emphasis from one category to another? So if you wanted to become a time trialist, for example, could training help with that?
Absolutely. And I would say to a degree, I mean, some people are going to be, your body build's going to probably direct some of that, but you can certainly influence. I mean, so it kind of comes back to so let's say you want to become a time trialist. Well, doing sprints is not the good way to become a time trialist. Doing steady state efforts at your threshold power at 20 minutes consistently over and over, or even longer, that's really how you're going to take that threshold power and rise it. And actually, as you don't exercise your sprinting ability may fall down that chart. Keep in mind that all these, we talk about having the best, your best 1 minute effort. If you're holding on to your best 1 minute effort from 10 years ago, saying that you're a pursuiter, you may not still be a pursuiter because maybe you've been training your threshold power number. You've increased your threshold power quite a bit, but you haven't focused on 1 minute power. And so you've kind of trained yourself to be ready as a time trialist rather than a pursuiter. So yeah, I'd say, again, I don't have specific knowledge of this, but I would not be at all shocked if professional teams absolutely trained different people for different parts of the race. They want somebody who's going to stick in the breakaway, they're going to train them as a time trialist. You want somebody who's going to create the breakaway, probably going to want a pursuiter, at least to get that break going. You want somebody who's going to close for you in the end and get that sprint finish. You want to train them on sprints. So
It's kind of like
So, yeah.
football. There's 11 different positions on each side, and every single one of them takes a different body type, a different muscle type. And you might be a tailback super fast, and you might want to be a lineman, but it ain't going to happen.
right.
You know,
Okay, good question. Oh, go ahead.
You could try and be a lineman, but
Yeah. Yeah, I would not be a very good lineman. You can't see in the video, but I'll let you know right now, I would not be a good lineman.
So essentially,
So-
genetics play a big part in the kind
I
of
would
variety.
say at least, I would say when you first start, you'll tell quickly from your genetics where your body or what you're apt to be. And you can I think you can change that through training. But you may, if your body is apt to be more of a time trialist, you may not be able to become a world-class sprinter. Like, it just might not actually be possible. But you can certainly become a better sprinter. There's no doubt about that. Does that make sense?
I think that makes perfect sense, because essentially that's, I live in a very flat part of the world, so being a climber isn't going to be a whole lot of good for me, but building on my sprint to the club runs would.
Yeah. Okay, good question here on Facebook. Adam Toledo says, for power analysis, do you prefer Training Peaks or Strava? So, I use both, and I would say what I tend to use, and this doesn't mean this is just my opinion, doesn't mean it's better or worse. I'm sure there's plenty of other ways to do this. I end up doing my single ride analysis, so looking at just the power for one ride. I tend to do that on Strava just because I'm already on Strava doing comments, kudos, and that. And there's a Chrome plugin I use that helps look up specific power performances for a given ride against that power profile chart. And so that's a very handy reference. It's called Strava Sauce. If you haven't heard of it, look it up on the Chrome store. So I tend to do single ride analysis on Strava, but then when I plan out and analyze weeks worth of training or where I'm going to go, how I'm going to push myself to the next level, that's really where I start getting value in Training Peaks. That's what I use it for, personally.
have you looked much at that new one that you showed us?
Yeah, Watts board. Yeah, so that's actually a great. So for those wanting to look at a good free resource for what I call multi-ride analysis, that's going to give you a power management chart over time. We found this website called wattsboard.com, and it marketed as being free, and it will pull in your power data straight from Strava. It'll sync it, and it'll give you performance management chart, your power profile lookup. May not have, I don't think it has everything that you'll get from Training Peaks, but if you're just looking for a power management chart and performance management chart and power profiling type information, it's pretty good for that. At least
And
so
the
I
guy
found.
will email it. The guy that runs it, when you set your account up, he sent me an email and said, "Hey, anything I can do, let me know."
There you go. So, let's see another comment here. Same question as Adam regarding power analysis. There's Strava, Training Peaks, Golden Cheetah, I think is what you're referring to. So yeah. So there, that's why, thanks for the comment, Jerome. That's why I qualified my response with, this is just my personal preference. There's software galore. I'd say Golden Cheetah, if you want to get down and dirty with the numbers, you want really deep analysis, and it's completely free, Golden Cheetah is a great open source tool. If you're looking, on the other end, you're looking for a lot of it to be kind of done for you. You maybe not have to worry about the the details. A lot of people tend to go towards Training Peaks for that, and you would. There are free versions, there's also paid there, but it's going to boil down to what you were looking to get out of the software, what your budget is, what specific features you want. So,
And what your coach wants.
yeah, I mean, you may have, if you have a coach, they may have a preference as to which you use so that they can easily get your training information. But all great questions. Yeah, in fact, I wonder if I can do a live demo. Oh, since we don't have any questions coming in, I'm going to attempt to get Strava Sauce up on the screen and give you guys a feel for what Strava Sauce looks like. We've got about 7 minutes left. Let's see if I can get that pulled up here.
So Justin, while you're doing that, are you using the paid Strava right now, or did you go back to regular?
I use paid Strava. I don't. I think it may look a little bit different. Strava Sauce without the paid. Let's see. Is anybody? Dave, do you mind if we pull up one of your rides?
No.
And analyze it?
Just don't laugh.
Give me a second here to pull this up. Okay. So, let's go ahead and take the cat and mouse race from yesterday.
Boy, bringing back memories.
Give me a second. Appreciate you allowing me to use your ride as an example here, Dave.
No problem. Nothing to hide.
Read the comments quickly, make sure there's nothing embarrassing. Looks good. All right, so let's bring that up. Okay, so here's what we talked about with Strava Sauce. I just went here to David Bussey's Strava ride, and here's what you get, which is really interesting, is you get this critical power edition here on the left-hand side, and we can go ahead and say, this is probably close to bet you had a really strong 30-minute effort. So we click on Dave Bussey's 30-minute effort, and it's going to tell me that his strongest 30-minute effort tells me what it is in watts per kilo, tells me the average and the normalized power, tells me what TSS he got during that time frame, and it also tells me here where that ranks on the power profile chart.
Ah.
So they're saying that if you can hold 3.2 watts per kilogram for 30 minutes, that's roughly a Cat 4 on the power profile chart. So we can come down here and see same ride. His 10-minute effort is higher in watts per kilo, but it's a shorter duration. So in this particular case, it was more of a Cat 5 effort. But honestly, this wasn't an all-out 10-minute effort for Dave. Dave was going for this whole race, which was was longer than 10 minutes. So, and we can look here and say, well, sure, let's look at his 5-second effort. It doesn't really register because, well, he wasn't training for sprints. He was really going for a longer 30-minute effort. So every ride, you may not have. You're not going to make a personal best in every time frame on every ride. That's just not realistic. But anyways, this will see if you think, man, I really drilled that 30-minute effort. This will help you quantify that on a global scale. And so here, something that Strava Sauce adds as well, we can go ahead and highlight, let's highlight his race portion. take out his cooldown, and we'll see here that his average, I don't know if you can read that, it's really small, but it gives you the average power as well as normalized power for that time interval, assuming that time interval is long enough to calculate normalized power. I think we've touched on normalized power, but I don't think we've gone into lots of detail. But suffice to say that in this case, you see Dave had a pretty steady effort. He had a strong surge at the end for the final sprint, but he wasn't doing bursty sprints all the way through. So his average power and normalized power are only about 5 watts different. And that's what you would expect. Now you may have a case where you're sprinting a lot and then resting, which may increase your normalized power, which is essentially how much of a stress is putting on your body. But it wouldn't necessarily increase the standard numerical average, just because all of the efforts in between that aren't as high in intensity would bring that down. So this is Strava sauce. Highly suggest checking it out. It is a good resource. So come back to the writing here. We've got another 2 minutes. Feel free. Ask any other questions you may have. If, while you're thinking your questions, there is available recordings of all the rides we've already done on the Team ODZ Facebook page. If somebody could do me a favor who's watching and drop the link to the Team ODZ What's Up with Power in the description. I think we have a couple helpers there. Okay, Kevin Conrad says, it was a good question, when should you really start paying attention to heart rate in training? That's a good question, and I think it would kind of depend on what your goals are. There are some people that go into heart rate variability and use that as an indicator for when they should or shouldn't train harder. We have outlined in week 1, which you have a recording of, the times when heart rate information is not the best to use. And so I'd suggest looking up in the Team ODZ. So if you go to teamodz.com, there'll be up at the top, there'll be a rides drop down, and you should be able to get to What's Up with Power. And on that page, there should be a link to all the previous recordings. And so I believe it was week 1 where we kind of talked about what differentiates power numbers from heart rate numbers. And some people go as far to just completely ignore their heart rate data once they've got power numbers. One thing I would say is definitely a good metric to pay attention to is what they refer to as your efficiency, and that is power per beat per minute. So this is something you want to look at over a long time scale, over say weeks or months, because as you train to get faster and faster, you should be able to be putting out, if your FTP is increasing, you should be able to be putting out more wattage for the same, all other factors the same heart rate. Anyway, so that's just a quick covering of power stuff. I hope you guys can join us next week. Our time is up for the day. It's been great having you, and hope to see you guys out in the island. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks so much, Justin. That was really interesting.